This article was submitted by $5 Patreon supporter Ivan G. Shrevey Jr., who's been supporting the show for quite some time now. Ivan, thank you so much. It's an article that was written by Henry A. Giroux at truthout.org. This gentleman who wrote this, just so you know, currently holds the McMaster University Chair for Scholarship and the Public Interest in the English and Cultural Studies Department, and has a long list of books: America's Addiction to Terrorism and America at War with Itself. So this, Ivan, this is the great thing to submit. Here's what the column is, basically: why the Democratic Party can't save us from Trump's authoritarianism. It's a very lengthy article, and I'll put the link in the YouTube notes. I highly suggest reading the entire article. It's very, very interesting. It talks about the two sort of factions in the Democratic Party and how the Democratic Party, as we've talked about numerous times, but this is yet another source validating what most of us progressives know, which is the Democratic Party can't be saved. And their attempts, their little band-aids that they're putting on these gunshot wounds are laughable, and none of them are going to work, because here's what the crux of this article is, and it's really good. It brings up such great points. And I'll read this opening line to the article. There is a certain duplicity in the Democratic Party's attempts to remake itself as the enemy of the corporate establishment and leader in a movement to resist Trump and his mode of authoritarianism. Right? While being a corporate party. This is what they're doing. Resist Trump. He's awful. He's bad. He's doing what? He's just doing more of the crooked, greedy corporate payout stuff than you guys are. It's such a valid article, and we'll go into the details here. Democrats such as Ted Lieu, which is from my district in California, Maxine Waters, and Elizabeth Warren represent one minority faction of the party that rails against Trump's racism and authoritarianism, while less liberal types who actually control the party, such as Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, claim that they have heard the cry of angry workers and are in the forefront of developing an opposition party that will reverse many of the policies that benefited the financial elite. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. They are the financial elite. Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are part of the financial elite. They're paid by the financial elite. That's who they serve. They don't care about the constituents or working people. They just don't. And this article goes into how both of these brands are both of these views, rather, are part of the Democratic Party's attempt to rebrand itself. So we're talking we're going to save the workers, and we're going to resist Trump. So they have a new populist platform called A Better Deal, Better Skills, Better Jobs, Better Wages, which is obviously they're just taking that from FDR's New Deal. But it says little about developing both a radical democratic vision and economic and social policies that would allow the Democratic Party to speak to more for the poor, people of color, and young people than for the corporate and financial elite that run the military-industrial entertainment complex. Their anti-Trump rhetoric rings hollow, of course, but this is what they're real good at. They're real good at stringing together a bunch of half-assed platitudes. What? Resist, and now they're talking better jobs, better wages. How? How are you going to do this? How? I say a Green New Deal. That already makes more sense. I'm telling you in that sentence, how are you going to make a Green New Deal, Graham? Well, we're going to manufacture clean energy here in America, and that's where the jobs are going to come from. Oh, see, I just explained it. They're just, resist, New Deal, jobs, schools, better for our platitudes, and I will give you the biggest platitude you've ever seen, Mr. Trump. They should just have a platitude parade where they just say platitudes. Or literally just say the word. Just go platitudes, platitudes. It's funny. this is another great point in the article. Authoritarianism also thrives on racism, xenophobia, exclusion, expulsion, and the deeming of certain subgroups as disposable, a script that the new Democratic Party has little to say about. David Broder has recently argued that being anti-Trump is not a sufficient political position. Oh, really? Just now they're figuring that out? Because doing so inures people to a myriad of neoliberal policies that have impoverished the working class, destroyed the welfare state, waged foreign wars and war on public goods, polluted the environment, created massive inequities, and expanded the reach of the punishing and mass incarceration state, even though these neoliberal policies were produced by both Republican and liberal Democrats. The message appears to have been taken up, at least partly, by the Democrats in a focused attempt to rebrand themselves as the guardians of the working class interests. Yeah. It's just like some rich celebrity that's like, I want to do charity work, and they just go to a soup kitchen like once a year, and they make sure there's a lot of TV cameras there, and it's like, boy, they're so in touch with the people. No, they're not. They just wanted that to be a camera op. That's all the Democrats are doing. They just resist. They're not going to let real populist progressives get in there. They're not going to let them happen because they'll threaten their actual money. The Nancy Schumer, they're just one. Chuck Pelosi, they're just the same thing. It's just a two-headed corporate beast. Pelosi, they're out of jobs if they bring progressives into the party. They're gone. They don't have Howard Dean. They're gone. He's gone. He doesn't have a job anymore. So that's why they're going to smear people like Nina Turner, because they have to. They have to protect their jobs. They can't, one of the things he said is that getting in bed with Wall Street is a favorite pastime of the Democratic Party. Oh, yeah. I mean, look at... Chuck Schumer has taken more from Goldman Sachs than anybody on record. Hillary Clinton got paid, $400,000 from a couple of speeches from Goldman Sachs and said we need to stop this anti-banking attitude in America. She said that in one of her speeches. Obama had 11 Goldman Sachs people in his cabinet. He helps create 5.2 million foreclosures and then takes a $400 speaking fee after he's gets out of the office and was like, every president has done that. No, Truman and Carter didn't. They didn't do that. They both didn't do that. The tyranny of the current moment bespeaks a long history of betrayal by a financial and political class that inhabits both major parties. It is no secret that the Republican Party has been laying the groundwork for an American-style authoritarianism since the 1970s by aggressively pushing for massive tax cuts for the rich, privatizing public goods, promoting a culture of fear, crushing trade unions, outsourcing public services, and eliminating restrictions designed to protect workers, women, and the environment. But they have not been the only party reproducing the dictates of neoliberalism. Getting in bed with Wall Street, as I said, is what the Democrats like to do. It was the Democratic Party, especially under President Clinton. The Clintons hijacked the Democratic Party in the early 90s and have run it into the ground. Bill Clinton prepared the groundwork for the financial crisis of 2007 by loosening corporate and banking regulations while at the same time slashing welfare provisions and creating the conditions for the intensification of the mass incarceration state. That's Bill Clinton. The Clinton administration did more than court Wall Street. It played a decisive role in expanding the neoliberal gains that took place 3 decades before he was elected. Nancy Fraser insightfully sums up this in her contribution to the Great Repression Anthology. Neoliberalism developed in the United States roughly over the last 3 decades was ratified with Bill Clinton's election in 1992. Turning the U.S. economy over to Goldman Sachs, it deregulated the banking system and negotiated the free trade agreements that accelerated deindustrialization. Continued by his successors, including Barack Obama, Clinton's policies degraded the living conditions of all working people, but especially those employed in industrial production. In short, Clintonism bears a heavy share of responsibility for the weakening of unions, the decline of real wages, the increasing precarity of work, and the rise of the two-earner family in place of a defunct family wage. So Bill did that. Hillary, on the board of Wall Street, voted against $15 an hour. right? The article goes on to talk about the Obama administration continued the abandonment of democratic values by bailing out the banks and selling out millions of people who lost their homes while at the same time aggressively prosecuting whistleblowers. It was the Obama administration that added a kill list to its foreign policy and matched it domestically with educational policies that collapsed education into vocational training and undermined it as a moral and democratizing public good. Obama mixed neoliberalism's claim to unbridled economic and political power with an educational reform program that undermined the social immigration and critical capacities that made democracy possible. Promoting charter schools and mind-numbing accountability schemes, Obama and the Democratic Party paved the way for the appointment of the hapless reactionary billionaire Betsy DeVos as Trump's Secretary of Education. This is great, Ivan G. Shrevey Jr. Thank you for giving, because this is what I've been talking about. Trump did not appear out of nowhere. This has been happening for decades to pave the way for Trump to come in and be this awful. And the article goes on and on. I mean, it talks about this new plan they've got. So the end of the article, I want to touch on this, goes, well, looking beyond the Democratic Party. A new vision for change cannot be built on the legacy of the Democratic Party. That's what we've all been talking about, right? What is needed is a concerted attempt to figure out what democratic socialism will mean and look like in the 21st century. This suggests rethinking the meaning of politics, one that can rekindle the social imagination. Gut the whole thing, start from scratch, come up with something completely new is what that sounds like to me. Central to such a struggle is the role education must play in creating the formative culture capable of creating critical and engaged citizens, which we do not have. We have a bunch of people that have had poor education, that are trained how to be workers and employees and consumers. And you are not supposed to get engaged. You're just supposed to sit there on your phone and do that and fuck around. And that's all you're supposed to do. And go fucking booze it up and do drugs and fuck off. That's all you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be paying attention. You're not supposed to be watching videos like this. You're supposed to say dumb and uninformed. That's what they want you to do. And just go buy some shit. And if you do, please use my Amazon affiliate link. Michelle Alexander is right in warning us that it would be a tragedy to waste the growing resistance against Trump by settling for any Democrat the next time around. Yeah, I've been saying this. Jimmy Dore's been saying this. So many people have been saying this. I heard that for 8 years of Bush. Anybody but Bush. Anybody but Bush. We can't have that. We need real progressives. We need real overhaul. We need real change. Not lip service and not people that are afraid of purity tests. This article is, here's the last paragraph. Politics becomes radical when it translates private troubles into broader systemic issues and challenges the commanding industrial and educational structures of neoliberalism. To be effective, it must do so in a language that speaks to people's needs. Oh, jobs, school, healthcare. Basic needs. You hear that, DNC? No, you don't. To be effective, it must do so in a language it speaks to their needs, enabling them to both identify and invest in narratives in which they can recognize themselves and the conditions that produced the suffering they experience. Talk about people's suffering, what caused it, and then how to fix it and make it better. When you just say, I'll fight for you and I'm with her, you're not saying anything to the person that's suffering. As a guy that lost his house and was like, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? I don't have retirement now. And I heard hope and change, and that's all I could cling to. And then that hope and change was bullshit. For this reason, the call for institutional change is inextricably connected to the politics of social transformation. Such transformation must propel us toward an international movement to build a society that embraces the beauty of universal emancipation and promise of radical democracy at a time in history when the stakes for democracy are so threatened and life on the planet itself so imperiled. Collective action is the only way out of the age of liberal democracy. It is time to go for broke. Vote with your dollars. Go for broke.